Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel. You're a host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I am so excited about starting a new year, and Happy New Year to everyone. And with me today, my special guest today is Julio Vincent Gambuto, who is writer and author of Please Unsubscribe. Thanks. How to Take Back Our Time, Attention, and Purpose in a Relentless World. Julio is also author of the viral essay, Prepare for the Ultimate Gaslighting. Both of those sound very interesting. Julio Vincent Gambuto is a graduate of Harvard University and earned his MFA from the USC School of Cinematic Arts, where he was an Annenberg Fellow. He is a movie maker, has written, directed, and produced film and television content for The New Yorker, Nickelodeon, PBS, E! Entertainment, Samuel Goldwyn Films, Stone and Company Entertainment, and Kerner Entertainment. Can you read my own handwriting? I want to welcome Julio Vincent Gambuto to Chatting with Betsy. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Betsy. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Hopefully I'm saying your name right.
You are. You nailed it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, I'm from New Jersey, so your name is pretty easy to get. Julia, you have a fascinating background, and your book and essay sounds familiar. So I'm going to start with your essay first.
Sure.
That went viral during I believe it was during the pandemic. Prepare for the Ultimate Gaslighting. What is that essay about, and how did it go viral?
Sure. So, yes, I wrote it a few weeks into the height of the crisis in March 2020, which it's unfathomable that's 5 years now. It's wild.
Yeah.
I really wrote it because I think at the time we were all pretty much struggling with trying to make sense of what was happening and trying to put it in some sort of context. And I was, pretty worried and concerned that there would be sort of a massive push to go back to normal and to kind of miss the opportunity, if you will, to investigate and kind of renegotiate what is normal and, question whether or not we should be going back to everything that we did personally and collectively, before the pandemic. So I wrote this essay, and it was a 2,000-word essay, and I posted it online and thought that, maybe 50 or 100 people would read it, and it just sort of took off like wildfire, and it went around the world in about 48 hours to 98 countries and about 20 million readers at the time. So it was a wild experience.
Wow, so it really touched people. People were able to relate to it, obvious, to get that response.
Yeah,
That's phenomenal.
Anyone who writes is always happy when more people read, but, I think it was way more about the message than it was about the number. And, I was just very, very humbled, and remain that way at kind of what I was able to say in that moment and to grasp people's attention in what was really an impossible time for everybody. Yeah,
it is wild to think that was 5 years ago. It really is. That time went by so fast.
I know. It just moved so quickly. I mean, we've been through so much, and yet it seems like only weeks ago.
Yes. And, Julio, you wonder, what is normal, anymore? Heard people say it's a setting on the dryer or washing machine. I think people really took stock of their lives. What's important, what's not important, the importance of, maintaining friendships, and what does take up your time. And you think, well, is that really important?
Absolutely.
it was just an incredible time period, and I don't even know if we fully recovered 5 years later.
Yeah, I don't think we have. I think we've sort of established, obviously, a new way of being afterward, and we went back to a lot of our old habits and behaviors, which is, I think, natural and normal. But yeah, I think we're in a very, I think, strange moment in history as technology changes and the world changes, and so some of that was brought on by the pandemic, and some of it wasn't. But it certainly is an odd time to be alive.
Yes, it definitely was. I was grateful in a way for the pandemic to be able to stay at home.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful because my husband had died January 1st, 2020.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you. So I was grateful I was able to be at home, but it was really hard for my son because he couldn't work, he couldn't socialize just when he really needed it. Yeah. And I'm really grateful that it brought out mental health to the forefront, and that people were talking about it's okay to go for support. So I was really grateful to see that.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I mean, it was a moment like no other in our lifetimes, and I think it required us to turn to each other and turn to professionals in a different way. Maybe if we hadn't done that before, it was the right time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You really appreciated just reaching out and people having the sense of abandonment because they couldn't see their loved ones, especially those that were in facilities and hospitals. It was really a tough time, and my heart goes out to all the nurses and doctors and first responders. I want to get to your book. I love the title of it.
Thank you.
Please, I really love that. Please unsubscribe. Thanks. How to take back our time, attention, and purpose in a relentless world. How did you come up with that title? I have to ask you that first.
Sure. Well, actually, I tell the story in the introduction. My former partner had actually emailed me that months after we broke up, and it was sort of his way of saying, I think we need to maintain a boundary here between the two of us. And it kind of became my mantra during the pandemic. It kind of became words to live by. I found myself, to your point, kind of really wanting to be connected to people and relationships and what mattered most to me, and disconnect from so much of the digital messaging and brand messaging and all sorts of nonsense that's coming at us on our screens and in real life day to day. So please unsubscribe, thanks, has sort of become my shorthand for cutting the tethers with things that are toxic or things that don't serve us, and doubling down on the things that are really meaningful for us.
Yes, I totally agree. When I saw the title of the book in the press release that the publicist sent, I said, oh, I love the title of this book.
Thank you.
And a catchy message, because how many times, I know I'm guilty of this myself, Julio, that I spend on social media, trying to catch up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, when I should be doing something else. And then sometimes I just have to disconnect. No. Like, I can't look at this anymore. I need a nap. I need to unwind. And, it's okay to disconnect from
It is. I think,
media.
we have really sold ourselves a pretty sexy story that we're supposed to be on all the time, whether that's online or sort of quote unquote on in our relationships or constantly connected, to all of this. And I think it's important to give each other the permission to step away and take a break and catch your breath and to reevaluate kind of whether or not these particular, whether it be a website, a social media network, whether it be a person, a relationship, a friendship, a colleague, whether it be a belief that you have about the world, good, bad, or ugly, we don't give each other enough permission to change and grow and kind of disconnect from the things that are standing in our way. So, the book sort of looks at all those different levels of what I call subscription in the book,
I think that your book would be very important for a young person. I mean, young person like teenagers, 20s, 30s. I mean, any age really. But I feel kind of sorry for young people today because they are so addicted to social media, and they struggle with anxiety and depression because they see other people and they want to be like them when you can only be yourself and try to be the best version of yourself. And they fall into this, I think I call it a tailspin of trying to compete. Even people, older, I interviewed a guest, and his book is about parenting, and he's like, well, there's such competition to look like the happy family on social media. We see a picture of someone, a family, and we think, oh, why are they so happy, and how do they, get like that, when you don't know what happened before or after that picture. And what's really, and what's really going on. In their life.
I have great concern about our young people, and I think that's becoming more and more of a conversation about what exactly is all of this doing to younger people. And, there certainly are benefits to the connectivity and to their ability to connect with one another, but it's at least in my opinion, very outweighed by the dangers that it presents to not sort of go out into the world and play, or go out into the world and connect and have real world relationships, or to learn how to resolve conflict. There's a lot of things that we learn in the world that we don't get to have those experiences on a screen, and I think it's important for young people to experience that.
Oh, I agree 100%, Julio. I was even, thinking with the young people today, how do you even have relationships? I heard dating and relationships are so different. Breaking up over with a text message instead of in person and just meeting people. But I grew up in the 60s. 70s where you socialized, you went out, you played, you made, you just went out on the street and played with whoever showed up. But now people are, on their phone. I think we're connected, Julio, but yet we're isolated at the same time.
That's it creates a lot of isolation. It does. It creates a lot of isolation. And I think, we've sort of bought in wholesale to the idea that, all technology is good, that if we can do something, we should do something. All apps are, helpful and beneficial in some way. And I think, my purpose with the book is really just to make people aware of their own behavior. Certainly I had to become aware of my behavior individually, all of us collectively. How often are we spending on these platforms, but also what are the messages that we're getting and how are we acting them out in our lives, right? Because once the screen goes away, there's at some point in the day that it does go away, do we take those messages into our daily lives, whether they're brand messages, corporate messages, all sorts of things that come at us that try to convince us, that life is one way or the other. And so, we certainly saw it during the election. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, we saw a lot of sort of manipulative messaging. And so I think it's important to just begin to become more savvy and more media savvy and more aware of what these messages are and what they ultimately wind up doing, in our lives. Right? We form relationships based on the messages that we get. We form networks based on the messages that we get. We form beliefs about ourselves based on the messages that we get. And the more understanding of those processes, I think the better we are, the better positioned we are to be aware of what's happening.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Technology is wonderful, and yet it can be harmful if not used in the proper way. I think a lot of times, and I've seen this in a lot of different support groups, Julio, is that, you could write something, someone could write something, but because you're not seeing that person's face or their expressions, sometimes it's taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
And that's how I think a lot of problems start. And I just think, you know what? If you don't agree with someone, just, scroll by. You don't have to start a fight over it. And
I think there's that escalation is much easier online because you don't sort of pay the costs that you pay in real life, right? You don't, or you don't have the same social cues, the same level of grace that you would, physically with another person, watching their eyes, understanding their laugh, seeing if they're, what tone they mean to communicate in, whether they mean you harm or don't mean you harm. I mean, all these things are communicated in nonverbal ways, human to human, but very often online they're just communicated by text, and that's, that can only tell part of the story.
Yes, and people, I don't know, people feel pretty brave and brazen when it comes to being bullies on their keyboard that they wouldn't probably not do in person.
No.
And I think that, back in my day, to date someone, you had to go meet them. There was no social, there was no computer, excuse me, no social apps. You just went out and hopefully you met someone. But and breaking up, you had to do it face to face. I mean, there was no cell phone. You called them up. And it's so different. I think people today are missing the social skills because they're doing so much on the screen that they're not looking at people. And if you go out, and I know I'm guilty of this, and my son and I do this, while we're waiting for our food, sometimes he's looking at his phone, and I'm looking at mine.
Yeah.
Instead of having a conversation. And you see a lot of families out or couples, and they're on their phones instead of communicating.
Well, it's a really easy go-to. It's a really quick fix for everything from, problems in a relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a family relationship, a work relationship, or, even just a Band-Aid over problems you can avoid much more easily. You can run to that much more easily. And it doesn't always provide the kind of enrichment that, conversation does. On the other hand, right, there's plenty of times where it might be appropriate or it might work well. And so I think, establishing really good parameters, having really, strong structures in place about how much not only screen time is allowed for children, but also, at what age do kids get to have a phone? Do they get to have social media? But even in relationships, how often do I want to be on this phone? How often do I want it tethered to me? And I think that also goes for things besides the phone, right? How often do we want to be watching television? How often do we want to be buying online? How often do we want to, go out into the world and go to a store and go to a restaurant as opposed to sitting at home and ordering Uber Eats and shopping on Amazon? It seems sort of silly on a one-to-one basis or at least on an individual basis. But when you add it up collectively over, our population, at least here in the States, you've got 300 million people acting this way, and it has some serious effects on the society.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I did an interview, let's say, it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, about the dark web, Julio, with a former sex trafficker.
Wow.
And yeah, and believe me, it was eye-opening. What they look for and how they look for people online, and there are predators that are online. And all I could say is, parents, guardians, watch your children on social media, because you might think they're playing games with the same age peer, and they're not.
Yeah.
And they look for people that are very vulnerable, that are having difficulties at home. And when I see, this might be off the base of your book, but when I see young women, even older women, strutting their stuff online, all I'm thinking is, you're asking for trouble. Because nowadays, they could get your name, Google your name, get your address, find out where you live. And that's what makes technology scary now.
We really eroded a lot of the boundaries that kept certain behaviors in check and in place, and part of what I advocate for in the book is really like not necessarily getting rid of all of it. That's a little unrealistic and unreasonable, but to just begin to question kind of how we can put limits back in, put parameters back in, put structure back in. And that's not for me to say, it's for each of us to kind of decide for ourselves, but to have the conversation about, what are the structures that I'm comfortable with? What are my own personal rules for being online, posting online? I will say, even within my own family, there's disagreement over that, right? There are some of us who have different rules than others. But it's a personal, prerogative, and also, it's an important question to be asking. So.
Yes. I think that, what works for one doesn't work for someone else. I just think of the line along safety, especially in posting about children, because unfortunately there are the world we live in today, that there are predators. And I don't know, my son is 40, but if I had young children now, I don't know if I'd be posting their pictures. I'd want to, but I think I would be really cautious because of the times that we live in. And I think we need to sometimes just put the phone away and enjoy the person's company.
Yeah.
If you enjoy the person's company.
Yeah.
You might be with someone you don't want to enjoy their company.
I think too we don't really know what's coming. I mean, I think at each juncture as these technologies were rolled out, there was a certain sort of marketing of them, if you will, to convince us that these were helpful and convenient and can make life better. And in some ways they have. But as AI also becomes more prevalent and prominent in the society, we don't know what's ahead of us. And so to kind of provide those things for the technology companies is, giving away your data, giving away your image, giving away all of that is, it's a definitely worthy of thought.
Yes, it's so funny you mentioned AI, because I was just going to ask you about that. I was just going to ask if you have in your book about AI and how that affects the being online, being on all these social platforms.
Yeah, AI. So the way that the book world is, I wrote the book now about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and it's on the shelf now. And along the way, AI was introduced and then made more popular. And so we got the chance, thanks to my publisher, to go back and to rewrite the sections that really related to AI. And I think the most important thing about AI to know is that the technicians who created part of it, so whether they were at Google or elsewhere, I mean, the man who's considered the godfather of AI at Google actually left Google in order to more comfortably share the message with the world that, we don't actually know if this has the ability to take over human, the human race. I mean, it sounds so silly to say out loud and sounds so alarmist, but the truth of the matter is we don't really understand the monster that we've created. And until governments around the world kind of get together and put shared agreements in place about what we are willing to cede to AI, we can potentially find ourselves in dangerous situations. And, the argument that you get from the business world, and you see it on TV, you see it in interviews, is, of course, that, well, the Chinese will – it's a competition, it's an AI arms race, and the Chinese, if they advance further than we do, the technology will allow them to rule the world. I'm not an international affairs expert, and I'm certainly not an economist, but I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of competition at play here, and a lot of that competition is being driven by big business. And we don't have any shared agreements in place globally, not even really nationally, that explore and understand and create limits for the way that AI can be used. It's a conversation worth being in and engaging in and learning about because there's great benefits to it. It's pretty incredible, but there's also potentially very large pitfalls.
Yes. I agree. AI can be used beneficially, and it could also be harmful because an AI image of someone saying something that they wouldn't say, and people think, oh, well, that's so-and-so, and look what they're saying, but it's not them, it's AI. I mean, this was like science fiction back in my day.
Absolutely, right? Not mine too, really. I mean, you wouldn't imagine that these things were possible in the 90s and early 2000s, and yet here we are. And we saw it a little bit in this political season. We certainly have seen the manipulation of information, and I think it's bound to just get worse. The more these tools are, the smarter these tools get and the more accessible the technology gets. To create a video of a political leader saying something that he or she or, has not said is incredibly dangerous to a society. And that kind of disinformation, that kind of manipulation is really, to bring this full circle, exactly what I was talking about in my essay. Like, that is the gaslighting that I'm talking about, right, is the kind of manipulation of information to a point where we all sort of start to spin on our own realities and think of reality as quite different from one another. And that has political ramifications, social ramifications, health ramifications. There's all sorts of results that come from that. And, we're living in it. And so it's time to speak up and speak out. And you can do that respectfully and gracefully, or you can do it screaming. But, it's important to at least be aware of the issues,
Yes. I think that, my own opinion, I know I need to spend less time on social media, but I realize that I am sort of addicted to it throughout the years, and but I know that I can unplug, and that it's okay, because sometimes you just need to unplug from the world and relax and chill out. Yeah. And like with anything else, there's good sides to new inventions, new ideas, technology, and used in the wrong hands, it could be bad. It's the way that it is used. They're using AI, a lot in science and in research, but I guess nothing takes the place of the good old human, research, and I feel like there isn't anything that can replace the human contact that was really missing, during the COVID years, the COVID time.
Yeah. I mean, some of the medical research is pretty incredible that they're doing, and I think AI, this is just a layman's perspective, but, I think AI is going to lead to, some really incredible breakthroughs, and I think that's an incredible use of AI, right? It's an incredible use of technology to advance human progress. But, our addiction to social media, and I'm the first one to be addicted, which is why I wrote the book. But, that has sort of primed us, if you will, for using these technologies casually, easily, without much thought, without questioning their power, without really understanding fully what they can be used for. So it's important for our young people, for even our not so young people, to understand and be more savvy about how these things are working, who's incentivized, who's making money, who's behind so many of the products and services that were being sold all day long, and to simply question it, to give each other the permission to question it.
Yes, and to do like your own research and not just take someone's word for something, because I've do a lot of interviews with a lot of different people, and people getting extreme, radicalized, whether it's the right or the left side of the aisle. You know what I would like to see, Julio, is for people to bring back their humanity. We need it so much now, just to be kind to each other. People are struggling, and just to be kind. You don't have to be, if you want to be nasty in person, that's like, don't be nasty online just because you're hidden.
Of course. And that's going to be more important as we go forward, right? Understanding our own humanity, our own ability for empathy, being empathetic, being connected to other humans. That is going to be the skill of the next century, right? And it will hopefully help us to navigate what's coming at us technologically.
So you are a movie maker. Would you make a movie about your book?
That's a great question. I think it would be a good documentary. I think the book explores the concept of unsubscribing in a few different areas, and one is digital, but also in our social networks in real life, in our work networks in real life. It explores kind of what it would be like to question the beliefs that we hold dear, that we've been taught, and I refer to those as subscriptions. So I think a documentary series would be wonderful, and it's certainly something that I've thought about. It is within the realm of possibility for sure.
I would like to see that, because I think it would be great. I was just thinking about that. I said, wow, you're a movie maker. Do you ever think about making a movie or documentary about what you've written? Because this would be great. I think a lot of people would be curious as to what it would be about and to watch it.
Yeah, there's a great documentary called The Social Network, I'm trying to think of the title. The Social Network was the movie. The documentary is called, oh my gosh, forgive me.
That's okay.
The point is there's a great documentary on Netflix about social media and understanding how it actually works, and how kind of digital capitalism, meaning capitalism with very advanced financial systems, has sort of led to where we are right now. It's called The Social Dilemma, excuse me. Yeah, it's called The Social Dilemma. And it is, of course, the dilemma that we all face, which is that it can be helpful to us, and we like it, and we want to use it, but it also has some pretty tricky levers acting behind it.
Well, your book sounds very interesting, Julio, and
thank you.
Thank you for coming on and talking about it. What would you like the readers to take away from your book? I know there's many things you'd like for them to take away, but what's the main thing?
I think as we go forward, I always recommend like 3 questions in any given situation. How can I slow this down? How can I put limits back in? And how can I make this a more human process? So whether that's talking to your kids and scolding them, or speaking with a teacher at a university, or shopping at the grocery store, whatever it is, but how do I slow this process down? How do I put limits back in, and how do I make it more human? Those are really the 3 major things that have happened in the last 20 years. We have sped up our lives and our world and our technologies. We've removed limits and boundaries and kind of eroded that social fabric. And then we have also sort of dehumanized a lot of processes. So, as far as the takeaway goes, I think those 3 questions are a good shorthand for everything that I'm talking about in the book.
That is excellent. And where can people purchase your book?
So the book was the book of the month for Barnes & Noble in August, and is still on bookshelves at Barnes & Noble. It's available anywhere you buy books, and certainly on Amazon and at Target and all of those places. But also I always, ask people to check it out at their local independent bookstore, ask for it at their local independent bookstore, and to support their local independent bookstore.
Wow, I have to look for that next time I go to Barnes & Noble. I'm in Barnes & Noble every weekend.
Oh, good, yeah. It's it's the lime green book right on the table.
Before we go to the movies, we go to Barnes & Noble, and I might have passed by it and just, didn't even notice, but now I'm going to have to look.
Sure.
So I go to Barnes & Noble. Yes, I'm going to look because I look for the authors that I have interviewed, and I only found 1 book of a person that I interviewed. Yeah. And I would ask, do you have this book by so-and-so? And they don't have it. I'm like, well, you really should have it. It's a great book.
I love that. Sounds wonderful.
And they look at me like I'm crazy. And where can people connect with you, Julio?
Sure. So I'm on social media a few days a week. That's my limit, but I'm on Instagram mostly, and that's at Julio Vincent Gambito, and you can just go to my website, which connects there as well, which is juliovincent.com.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to spell your name for the audience. It's JulioVincentGambuto. Julio Vincent Gambito. Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you, Julio, and I wish you lots of success and luck. And if you do make a documentary, email me, and I will have you back on to promote it.
I will let you know. Wonderful. Well, I love it. Thanks so much. Thanks to you and to your...
Or another book. If you write another book. Well, you are welcome, and my pleasure to help out almost a neighbor
yes.
of mine. So I wish you lots of success and on your future endeavors. So thank you so much for coming on. I enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, Ceci. Be well.
You're welcome. Well, folks, I want to thank you for listening. All the information about Julio Vincent Gambito will be in the blog that Jeannie White, who's the station manager, writes, and Jeannie produces the show. Please read the blog because it contains the information where you can contact the guests, learn about the guests, and I always encourage people to Google the guests because there's always so much information that I don't have time to put forth on the show because I want to talk to the guests and get a great conversation going. And I want to thank you all for listening and for sharing the show. Please share the show. I'm here to help others, and I enjoy doing what I do. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio Network, who makes this all possible. And if you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, it is for free I am on Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music, to name a few. And this is, 5 years, going to be going on 6 in September, but I just celebrated the 5th anniversary of Chatting with Betsy, and I am very grateful that I get to talk to wonderful guests. I learn from each and every guest, and I hope you do also. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever before. Let's bring back our humanity and be kind to each other. And that's what I have to say today, folks. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passion World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Bye-bye now.